Glad to have you guys. And this just shows your initiative to invest in your future and invest in your education. So glad to have all you guys here with us. And like I said before, our panel is scholarship / financial aid. So if you guys do have any questions, feel free to put in the chat. And also, if we don't get to all the questions, you could just email or just find the panelists on LinkedIn, and you could just follow up with them with any questions that you have. And Aden also put his email in the chat. So yeah. All right. So I'm not sure if the other panelists are here yet. By the looks of it, they're not here yet. I think Aden is the only one that's here, but we're waiting on the others. I mean, yeah, we're just getting started. So yeah, we have Aden, and he's a university scholar at Duke. Aden, do you want to introduce yourself a bit more?
Sure. So my name is Aden. I'm class of 23 from Appalachia in East Tennessee. So I'm a university scholar at Duke. I'm studying public policy and economics. I applied to Duke as a biomedical engineer. So it changed a little bit since then as far as what I'm studying. But I'll talk about that a little more later as well. And yes, please do reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help. I wish I had been able to find stuff like this when I was applying to college. I know I stressed myself out way more than I probably had to. So please do ask me about anything. Always have time to talk. And great to see you all here.
Awesome. Yeah. Right. So just to get some of a context, Aden, can you maybe explain more like what being a university scholar means and just like the benefits? Yeah.
Certainly. So I know as you guys are probably all pretty far in looking at where you want to go to college. For me, the first thing I looked at when I was choosing my college was financial aid. So I had to cover all of my own college. My parents like early on said that they were not interested in helping me cover that. So when I was started to look through, so there's two main categories that you want to look at. There's your national scholarships that are hosted by a separate program, and you can then apply to whatever school you end up at. Or there's school-specific scholarship programs. My program is a scholarship program that's housed within Duke University. So when I applied to Duke, the Office of Scholars and Fellows, they took my application, and then I had to submit a separate application to the university. And the scholarship covers tuition, room and board, and extra expenses for 4 years of undergraduate study. So I highly recommend looking at the schools you're interested in applying to. I mean, that made it possible for me to go to a school I never dreamed of going to. I applied to Duke right before the deadline because I thought it was going to be way out of anywhere I could ever hope to go. But I would encourage you to look at what your school has to offer and always be willing to go out on a limb and throw your name in there, spend that little extra time on the application, because it can make a major difference. And I mean, the worst thing they can say is no. It's worth the shot. It's worth putting yourself out there for that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aden. That was great. And our panelists, Alia also came. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Yeah, Alia goes to Rice University. She's a Gates Scholar. She's a National Merit Scholar and a Questbridge Scholar. Alia, do you want to introduce a bit more about you, like your background and things like that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for the introduction. So hi, everyone. My name is Alia. So I am, as she mentioned, a Questbridge Scholar, and that's how I got into Rice. I was a match scholar. And so I will be entering my sophomore year this year, and I'm studying chemical and biomolecular engineering. So yeah, and so I do have, a lot of experience applying to all those different scholarships. And so, yeah, that's a bit of my background.
Awesome, thanks. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, but we'll start with a few questions just to kickstart things. So the first question that we have for the panelists is, when should you start looking for scholarships? We all know the term, like, it's never too early, but we kind of just want a timeline.
I'm happy to take a stab at this. So me personally, a lot of your applications will begin to come due either mid to end junior year, very, very early in your senior year. So what I did, I took time during my sophomore year, which is before I had massive pressure because of regular applications. And I made a list of everything I thought I was going to apply to, both housed within schools and separate programs, like programs like Youth Senate, Coca-Cola scholarship, all of the kinds of stuff, and then even regional specific ones. There's a scholarship in East Tennessee called like the Nice Swanger Scholarship. So look up, do your research before you have to apply in a few weeks. Make that list. It'll take a massive amount of pressure off of yourself. And then starting junior year, as scholarship applications begin to come due, I could just work my way down that list. And it really helped me stay on top of it and keep track of where I was in the process. And it kept it from being too much added pressure when I was doing my full college applications as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I think that just something that I would add is when you're looking at your scholarship programs, do keep in mind the timeline of when, all of the things happen, because for some scholarships, you can apply and like a couple weeks later, maybe you can hear the result. But for other scholarships, you might want to prepare, months and months in advance, because they have, several stages. They'll have a stage where you have to write essays, and stages where you're going to have to do an interview. Maybe you have to go in person, and, there will be like a scholar, finalist day, and they'll have like stages where they will select, the first round of applicants, and then semifinalists, and then finalists. And so it's just good to, look at those timelines and make sure, how you're going to get it done with all of your other, college applications, because sometimes they're at the same time, sometimes they might be a little earlier or before. And so it's just good to keep those things in mind. So definitely prepare, throughout your junior year, because a lot of these big scholarship programs are going to start in, the August or September at the start of your senior year of high school, and they'll carry along with the rest of your college applications. But with that being said, also keep in mind, that there are scholarships specific to your school or to programs that you're applying to. So those are also good to look into.
Definitely, these were great responses and really informative. My main takeaway is probably to start early, especially for those big scholarships, like the most well-known ones, probably really competitive, like the Coca-Cola scholarship, Gates Scholar, things like that. And do you have any advice for students who are maybe like looking for scholarships that they can actually win and have like a smaller applicant pool kind of?
Make friends with your guidance counselors. That really helps. I lived in the guidance office my senior year. I would run files for them, go to the printer room, just literally anything to be in there and talk to them, because they have the list of everything that your county or area has typically, and they can tell you what you have a chance to apply to. And your guidance office will even pick who goes to some scholarships. So you want to make sure that they know who you are, have a copy of your application, work with them on some of your applications. If you have the chance, make sure that they think about you for the stuff that becomes available. You can ask them if they have a list of local scholarships or if the county puts out any materials, because they'll usually know that answer. I went to like a very small school, but the guidance office had a Word document that was a list of all of like the local business scholarships, or like the Rotary scholarship, and all of these little scholarships really can add up. Books can be expensive. You'll have expenses that you don't expect, and these just really can make a massive difference in that. And I mean, some of them add up to quite a bit. So really, I would make sure you know your counselors, and I would ask your counselors if they have a list for local scholarship applications. Other than that, Google's your friend. If, as we were saying, if you start early, you have a lot of time to look for these and figure out what exists. Some keyword searches like Rotary scholarship, your county, local business scholarships, stuff like that. You can also check your school or county's website, but sometimes the counselors will have a better list of what's available there.
Yeah, I think you hit that spot on with being friends with a counselor. I think that's like one big piece of advice that you can give to, any high schooler, because, your scholarships are going to come from your counselor. They're going to let you know about, all of those things. But another big thing is that they're going to be the ones writing your recommendation letters, and they're going to be the ones, sending your transcript and filling stuff out. And so you really want to make a good impression on them and be really good with them, because, they're going to be putting in a lot of time and effort. And so you're going to really need their help and cooperation, especially if you go to a big school. So, some schools are, with like 60 students or something. And so there might be like one or two counselors there. But like at my school, we had like 700, 800 students, at a time. And even though we have multiple counselors, each of the counselors is, still super busy with like at least 100 students. And so you want to make sure that you also keep yourself very organized if you're going to apply to multiple of those smaller scholarships. Maybe like make a list of, all the scholarships that you're applying to and all of their requirements, so that your counselor will have an easier job. And so, when you come to them, they're going to be, open to it, and they're not going to be stressed, and, all of your materials are going to get to where they need to be on time. And in addition, I would say, like, once you, start your college application and scholarship application process, you're going to, sort of have this like repertoire of essays. And, you're going to have all sorts of essays, like, why you're doing your major, or where you see yourself in a couple of years, or your background, or your goals, and things like that. So definitely have those organized, because, when you get these, smaller scholarship applications, maybe they just have like one or two essays. And so you can take the ones you have, modify them, adapt them, and then send them in. So have, things like that ready. Have your, scholarship, just like essays ready. Have your resume ready. That's a good idea to have, because, you don't know where it's going to be required. So definitely look into all of those smaller scholarships, because you can, usually do like a couple of them, in an hour. So maybe set aside a couple, hours each week to, just focus on scholarships, search them up, and just apply, because there are millions and millions of dollars of scholarship money out there that students just don't apply to. And so a lot of that goes wasted. So, you're never gonna, I think there's a quote that says like, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So just go ahead and, try it out. The worst thing that they can say is no. But of course, if you do get it, then that's, a huge burden off your college years.
I'd like to add, that's a great point. Especially, I'd like to throw in that it actually can help you even if you don't get it, because a lot of the smaller ones are due before the large scholarships or the national scholarships come around. So you can get some really great practice in with crafting your essays, working on your resume, and getting an interview practice. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really insightful, and it's definitely become my like motivation to actually start and search some scholarships. So thank you for that. The next question I had for you guys is, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in chat. I don't want to be like the only person asking questions, because that's kind of boring. But I guess I guess the audience like my questions, so I'll just continue. The question I had is like, if you like win a scholarship, like what will happen to like financial aid that colleges give you? Like, does that just disappear? Can you like stack scholarships? Yeah, like, I just don't know how that works.
So that really depends on the school that you're going to. State schools, typically you can stack all your scholarships. So yet another motivation, even if you're already getting some money from the school, or you don't need a scholarship. If you go to a school like that doesn't really give out need-based aid, you can stack and you can keep that money and help cover other costs. A lot of your private schools, you may have heard the phrase that they'll like meet demonstrated need. That means that they're going to give you money to make sure that you can go there if you get in. So let's say that you fill out your financial paperwork, like your FAFSA or your profile, and the school determines that you need X amount of money. Sometimes they'll give that to you as need-based aid. Schools that do that will replace your need-based aid with private scholarship money. Sometimes it really depends on the school's policy. A lot of times this will be on the website. So that was a major thing for me. Some of the schools I applied to, I would get into the school and I would get some need-based aid for them, but it would the number that they came to was still too much for me to afford. and any other scholarships I brought in would essentially would replace the need-based aid. So it still wouldn't have worked out at those places. So I would say your general rule of thumb, need-based aid will be replaced. Merit aid will not be replaced. If you get a scholarship from the school that gives you money for being like a great example is National Merit Scholarship. A lot of schools will give you X amount of money for being a National Merit Scholar. That money won't be replaced. I can't think of any schools off the top of my head that replace that money because it's merit money. So if it's money given to you that the school is trying to get you there because you earned some distinction, let's say, then that money is yours and you can stack on top of it. If the school doesn't, and it's just the school's financial aid policy, they're not going to take that money out of the school if you are, because they've determined you can pay, let's say, $10,000 a year. You're going to pay $10,000 a year unless you've got enough outside scholarships to pay the entire cost of the school. Because the school's not going to take 60,000 out of their own pool. If you have, let's say, an extra like 10,000 a year, they're going to give you 50,000 plus that 10,000 of your own scholarship money, and then you still pay 10,000 because then they can put that money towards another student who needs the financial aid. So that's generally a rule of thumb there. Does that make sense? It's very complicated, and a lot of schools don't advertise this per se because, I mean, it's not a great take, but feel free to ask if that doesn't clarify it. That's roughly, I guess, how I would describe.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think this is a very wonderful question because this is something that I wasn't too sure about before I began college. And so I guess I can touch on Questbridge and Gates since that's what I'm familiar with. So for Questbridge specifically, the money for Questbridge comes from the school. So any other, scholarships that I got, so I also received the National Merit Scholarship. And so what my school did was it reduced, so say Rice is asking, the cost of attendance, say is like $70,000, right? So Questbridge is covering that for me. But if I'm getting any outside scholarship, then what they do is they say, okay, now, and so the National Merit was like $2,000. So they'll say, okay, well, our aid is now going to be $68,000, and then that $2,000 is going to be covered by the National Merit Scholarship. So basically, that's not money that I received because the school reduced it first, and like you said, that other money could go towards another student. So that's what their policy is. But for some other schools, I think it might be Chicago. There are, other policies in place where like up till a certain amount, if you like other scholarships up till like say $3,000 or $5,000 will get back to the student, and then after that it'll reduce the aid. So it really just depends on the school. And then for something like Gates they last dollar scholarship, which means that they are going to cover any last costs of your school. So say your school requires $50,000 of you, and you have $30,000 in other scholarships, then that'll go towards your tuition, and they'll take all of that. And then Gates will pay the remaining $20,000 because it's a last dollar scholarship. So those are just some of the policies, how it is. And so, definitely look into what your school does. But I would say, this should not deter you at all from applying to as many scholarships as possible, because you never know what the situation is going to end up being, and you want to always be better prepared and be safe than sorry, because you do not want to end up with fewer scholarships than you could have applied to. Because one other key thing is that as you grow older, there are fewer scholarships that you can apply to. So or this may not be like completely true, but I know that when you're in high school and undergrad, there are tons of scholarships available to you. But then, when you go to your master's program, there are fewer ones available. And then, as you go into other levels of education. So if you are planning on going and, say going to, grad school or like med school or something like that, then it's good to get, gather scholarship money right now so that you can even use it later. So just keep those things in mind.
Yeah,
I wanted to 100% echo that. And one more thing I wanted to throw out about applying for scholarships, even if you don't know if you'll need them. Schools that meet need-based aid include loans in that. So they will sometimes, their number that they say they cover includes a loan that they offer you. That's the first thing to go if you replace it with your outside money. So let's say that the school is going to give you 25,000 of need-based aid just because you applied there and were accepted. Then 5,000 of that might be a loan. And if you have a $2,000 scholarship, it becomes a $2,000 scholarship, $3,000 loan, which is really, really important. And it's a good thing to keep in mind. There's no downside to applying. I want to echo everything that she said about it. Please don't let this deter you from applying to scholarships. It's never going to be a negative.
Yeah, thank you so much for all your wonderful insights and answering my question. Now I see much more questions pouring in, so thanks guys for participation. And oh yeah, now Shin had a private chat question that she messaged me a few minutes ago, so now she want to ask that aloud.
Sure. So my question was, what grade should we start looking at scholarship, and when should we really be applying for them?
Start looking freshman to sophomore year. Make your list, make your calendar. Don't let it sneak up on you. Take the time. Like we said earlier, take the time to work on honing your essays. Some very long applications. If the scholarship application doesn't change from year to year, you can start working on your personal statement, and then you have time to make sure that it's the best it can be when the scholarship comes due. Getting an early start is never a bad thing. You'll be applying mostly mid junior year to mid senior year is the main window. But and some scholarships are multiple rounds. I have my scholarship that I submitted an application like with my Duke application. Then I had to submit a second round of essay questions when the school reached out to me, and then I had to go and interview for a week. Make sure, just get started early, and that also makes sure you can keep your calendar in order when all that does come up.
Yeah, because most of the scholarships that you're going to be applying to at the start of your high school career are going to be smaller scholarships. And so, those are just ones that you can gather, and those are probably going to be paid directly to you. But then, during your junior year and the summer before your senior year, it's good to start looking into those major scholarships, the ones that are going to, probably be more competitive and just larger in their amount. And those scholarships are probably going to be paid to your school, so those are going to be, I guess, like more impactful on your college career. So those are just some differences, but of course, whenever you can, just apply to scholarships. And there are tons of like websites online that you can subscribe to, and they'll send you emails about scholarships that are available. So like FastWeb, if y'all have heard of that. And just more scholarship searches. They're probably also going to be available on your school's website. So check there for, more local scholarships. But like you said, yeah, just start applying as soon as you can once high school starts.
Yeah, thanks so much. And the next question is from Ifiginia. If Ifiginia wants to ask that question aloud.
Yeah, so I'm an international student. I'm from Greece and I want to study in the US. So I wanted to ask, what is your advice for international students like me who are trying to get a scholarship? From what I have heard, it's very difficult, and they don't give so many scholarships to international students. And when they give, it's not a very big scholarship.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot harder. Especially because some schools have different need-based aid policies for international students. So that can sometimes take a large chunk of aid off the table. I will say a good idea is to look at school-specific scholarship programs. My scholarship and the other scholarships in the office, I'm the ambassador for the incoming students who are interviewing. There's a set number of spots that are set aside for international students in my scholarship program each year that they have to fill with international students. So again, if you apply to Duke, let's say, and as an international student, your application might get put in the pile for these programs, and you're only competing against other international students for that spot, and it still covers the full cost. A lot of other schools will do something similar. I applied to similar programs at a bunch of other universities as well. And that seemed to be a common thread. I don't think any of them were only domestic students. So I will say you have even depending on citizenship and a lot of other things, this answer can vary. it's very personal. But I would say look very heavily at university hosted programs. So something like university scholars at Duke, Wells Scholars, Foundation Fellows, like the Cornelius Vanderbilt Scholarship at Vanderbilt, stuff like that. You probably have a higher probability of being eligible for, I would say. And those typically try to recruit international students as well.
Yeah, and I don't have too much information specifically on international students, but one thing that I will say that's a good tip for anyone who's applying to college and who's in college is to advocate for yourself. Because if there's a school that you're interested in, go ahead and reach out to, the admissions office, to the financial aid counselors, and tell them about your situation. There are obviously programs that, span the entire school, but if you talk to them about your situation and ask for, some way out, and you really talk to them, then they will help you out. And that's how you're going to get opportunities. So don't hesitate to just reach out and just, talk to someone.
That can never hurt. If you're accepted to a university, they think you're a fabulous person and they want you to go there. So they're not going to retract their offer of admission if you ask them about financials. I know a friend of mine got into Harvard, and like the cost was way too high, and she was able to, she told them like what her circumstances were, and they reduced it to something that was very easily affordable for her. That I can't echo enough. That's one of the best pieces of advice you'll get today. It's a great point. So please do take that to heart.
Awesome. Thank you so much for letting us know that, affordability may not be like it may seem like a barrier to college admissions, but really it's not. All right. So the next question is from Artha, and he asked, do scholarships expire? Are scholarships applied to tuition, or can they be used for textbooks or room and board?
You'll get a pretty wide mix. A lot of local scholarships that are $500 or $1,000 will just give you a check, and they'll say you use this for education related expenses, which includes just about anything. Some will ship the money, will mail the check directly to the school. I have a scholarship program where I have to fill out a form with my account number through my university, and they will send a small check to the university, which then goes into my personal expense account, will come off of whatever the school would bill me. So it really just a wide mix. The scholarship will tell you usually, they'll make it pretty clear. And in the end, very few are restricted to only one thing. Typically it's educational expenses, which is pretty broad.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. And as far as scholarships expiring, they're not really going to expire because, if they're sent to you, it goes to your bank account, you can use it whenever. And if it's sent to your school, then, you have the chance to use it while you're in your undergrad. And one other thing that I will say is that if you have, if you're worried about textbook costs and stuff, this doesn't, I guess, relate directly to scholarships, but there are other programs that can reduce those costs for, textbooks and such. So there are ways to make sure that you use your money in the best and most efficient way possible so that it can stretch as far as possible.
Use LibGen when you're in college for textbooks. Do not pay $500 for a textbook. Stuff
Definitely.
like that.
Definitely. I will take that advice to heart because I don't want to pay for textbooks, especially really expensive ones. I'll probably use an online textbook. And next question is from Ruben, is for rising senior, which scholarships do you recommend?
This is I would your counselors, local money. Look at the big ones. There's national merit is an easy one. You study for a test. That's about as cut and dry as it gets. Look at if you're actually I'll save those. You can probably talk about them better. Look at university specific scholarships. Highly advocate for looking at those. A lot of schools have their own merit scholarship programs. Even places you don't think would. Duke, Vanderbilt, I think Columbia has a program. You don't directly apply, but your application can be put in for it. A lot of the schools you wouldn't think have them even do. And every state school that I have looked at has some sort of university sponsored merit scholarship, whether that's the stamps or a named scholarship at the school. Indiana has the Wells Scholarship, Georgia has Foundation Fellows. Like Virginia has stamps, Michigan has stamps. There's a lot of different options throughout the gambit. And some of them you have to apply earlier or at an earlier deadline or submit some additional materials. So I would look at that early. But if you have your list of colleges that you want to apply to, I highly recommend Googling like Ole Miss scholarships and looking at what comes up. Because a lot of schools have these, or Ole Miss full ride scholarships, University of Texas Austin full ride scholarships. Like most schools will have those, and it's worth putting in, like checking the box or putting in the one extra essay to apply to those. National merit is there's a whole, national merit can be confusing sometimes. There's a lot of uncertainty around this. It took me a lot of time to figure out what exactly national merit actually was. There's the full scholarship, and if you test in the certain percentile, you can submit a brief application and they will give you a separate sum of money directly from the National Merit Corporation. Some schools recognize if you are a National Merit Scholar and test at that level, they will give you separate money from the university. My plan for most of high school is to go to the University of Alabama. If you're a National Merit Scholar, they'll give you a full ride scholarship. They will also give you set amounts of money for having a certain ACT score. A lot of schools will also do that. There's a whole list online of schools that give full or partial scholarships to National Merit Scholars. Even schools like the University of Southern California will give you like half off tuition or something if you're a National Merit Scholar. So if you have that designation, I would spend some time researching what the school specifically offers to students with that designation. That's a bit of a sidestep, but that's a big one that I know some of you are probably thinking about, and it's worth keeping that in the back of your head, that it's not just the $2,500 or the $2,000 from National Merit itself that can fall under that umbrella.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point, because, your test scores, they're one part of your application, but schools really care about your test scores, like depending on the school, because they can give you a lot of scholarship money, right? Even if they're not important in as much in the admissions process, certain scholarships are just based off of that. So do keep that in mind. And as far as just applying to scholarships, just do your research, right? There are, certain scholarships that you can apply through the common application, like there's the Jack Kenton Cook one. There's other ones that have their own portals. And so, like, just to name a few, there's Questbridge, there's Gates, there's the Elks Foundation, there's Coca-Cola, there's HSF scholarships. They're ones particular to like certain races or ethnicities. One's particular to different schools. So there's basically a scholarship for everything. I know there's a scholarship for being left-handed. And of course, all of these just vary, in terms of their size and in terms of their process. So just do your research and do as much digging around as possible, which is why, like, I'm not sure what demographic, these students are from, but like from the start of high school, start compiling a list and like say, okay, this is when I'm going to apply to this one, so that you're prepared and you just have all the options available to you when you need them.
Awesome, thank you so much. Yeah, great. So next question that I had, since nobody wants to ask any questions, is does financial aid stay the same, and how do I just like does financial aid stay the same like all throughout your college years? Like,
not exactly. This is something that you want to be really careful thinking about. Some schools will freeze your financial aid. I think UNC does this, where if you apply and you're accepted, you'll pay the same thing for all 4 years. But this is not really the norm. A lot of schools, if you're receiving need-based financial aid, then you will usually resubmit the FAFSA or the CSS profile every year. And that will be what they go off of. Typically, they won't change it unless you've undergone a major change in your household. If you sold a house and got like a massive return on it, usually not stuff that applies to most people. So that's worth thinking about. But again, this does not apply to most people, but keep it in the back of your mind. Your cost usually won't fluctuate that much, but it might. If you're receiving merit aid, yes and no. No, your merit aid won't change unless you like fail to meet the stipulations of a scholarship. Let's say you have to keep a 3.0 GPA and you have a really bad year and you get like a 2.5. You could lose that money. That is a real possibility. Doesn't happen. The scholarships will usually give you a lot of support to make sure that does not happen to you. But you could always lose scholarships. Also, the amount of merit aid you have can vary from year to year. Let's say you win 5 $1,000 scholarships from your county. You're going to get that extra $5,000 your first year. And then the next 3 years, you might not necessarily have it. It could be a one-time scholarship. But stuff like a school scholarship program, like the university scholarship program, I get the same amount year after year. So that won't change. So for most people, no. But I mean, be aware of your circumstances, be aware of what age you have, and that from year to year, your scholarship might not be renewing. So it's worth like making sure you like read the papers they give you with the money, because it can save you some awkward situations later.
Yeah, and just one thing that I wanted to add is some other like factor that counters into your scholarships is your Pell Grant. So you may or may not be eligible for the Pell Grant, but that will change each year depending on your situation, you know, each time you fill out the FAFSA and all of that. So, you know, some years you may have that, some years you may not. And so one way that, you know, this might be compensated for is work study. So that's offered by some schools. And so you can work and that will, you know, basically pay off, you know, part of your you know, tuition or, you know, your other school costs. So that's one way to look at it, but I think everything else you've covered pretty well.
Awesome, thank you so much. And the next question that we had for you guys is, like, what are some hidden costs of college, like apart from like the more visible ones like tuition, room and board, and those direct costs? And just like what is the average cost of these these indirect costs per year?
Really school specific. If you've noticed, I don't know, my best friend when I was applying were the cost of attendance calculators that a lot of colleges have on their websites. You may have seen some of those will include like other costs or a section like named something like that. Beyond just your room board and food, or like your tuition, room and board. Those costs I have found are an overestimate typically. You can choose to spend a wide range while you're there. Finding stuff, buying used textbooks, or finding them online, stuff like that can save you several hundred to $1,000 depending on what you're studying each year. That's a big one. Like when I started, I did not have the money to just buy like the list items on all my syllabi. So I bought a bunch of used textbooks for $5. Those work just as well. Don't be scared of a book with some writing in it. The only thing, like a lot of used books will be highlighted. It doesn't affect how you can study. Will not be a problem. It can save you some money. Food, you can choose how often you want to go out with friends and eat off campus. A lot of schools will give you like a meal plan for on campus food that I found will typically cover all you need. But if you want to go out with friends, that's just something you have to budget month to month. So I have like an amount of money that I know I can spend if I want to go out to lunch with some of my friends. A lot of schools will give you free tickets to sporting events on campus. Sometimes they don't, or sometimes you might want to go to an away game. Costs like that, your entertainment costs are a big one. Your school will have a lot more going on than you think. So there's a bunch of great free options on campus. That's something I've really become I've spent a lot of time finding those. And it's definitely possible, but you can spend quite a bit if you want to go out go out every weekend, let's say, and like go around town, eat, or like go to concerts, stuff like that, which totally fine and definitely like good to do sometimes. But I mean, if you're thinking about your budget, be conscious of stuff like that. Those costs can add up. I would also say the last thing is student activities. Think about a club sports, a lot of times will have a fee. Intramurals typically don't. So, I mean, I played intramurals. And also joining social groups, frats, sororities, those can sometimes have fees. But with all of these things that are housed on campus, they also have scholarship programs. So if you're receiving need-based aid or anything like that, again, talk to people. You can get that waived. That should not be a barrier. So you can spend as much as you'd like, but there are definitely ways to be conscious. I would say it amounts to like a couple thousand, give or take, depending on like how much that's how much you can save. I know the financial aid calculator for Duke puts aside 3,000 to 4,000 for extra costs. I've cut that down to about 1,000. So it's definitely very doable. Just depends on like what decisions you want to. And very personal, very college specific, but I hope that helps in broad terms.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's pretty good answer. So just remember to budget, because when when you're conscious of where your money's going, then you can, easily say, okay, that's unnecessary. Maybe I can cut down on that, just things like that. And one thing that you mentioned that I really want to reiterate is, school activities, because I think that, going out of campus and doing things can be avoided, but sometimes, you really want to be a part of your community and do things in your school and, join clubs and do all of that. So oftentimes there are accessibility funds, which you can talk to maybe, the club sponsors, or, there are certain offices on your school, and they will, have specific, programs where you can say, okay, this club is going on this trip for this competition and I want to join them, but I don't have the funds to do so. So they'll waive it, or they'll give you the money to participate, because they really want to encourage, students to be involved, and they don't want to, have money as a barrier to any of that. And just one last thing that I wanted to say is, like he said, don't be afraid of any writing in a college textbook. In fact, that could even be beneficial for you to, look at other people's notes. So, borrow textbooks from upperclassmen. Definitely make friends with your upperclassmen. They can be a great resource for you. Find that support group on campus. You can even rent books off of Amazon. So do that. Sometimes, your professors will have extra copies. So just go ask them, do you have an extra copy that I can borrow for the semester? And sometimes you won't even need the textbooks because they're on your, syllabus list, but the professor won't actually use it. So don't go ahead and buy things before the professor tells you to, because you might want to be proactive, but a lot of times it's just not necessary.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Sometimes you can even get textbooks from your library. It's be creative.
Sorry about that. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for that. And I think that closes the Q&A session. And of course, if you guys do have any questions, feel free to reach out to them via email. They also have LinkedIn, so you can connect with them, make those connections. And we're just gonna close it off with some this or that questions. So the first question is, are you guys a morning bird or a night owl?
Whatever my schedule of classes is, there's usually no in between for me. I've had the misfortune of having late registration a lot. My school will split you into early and late groups, and when you get late, you take whatever class is open. And so my free time is whatever the opposite of my schedule is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And for me, normally it ends up being that I'm a night person, because that's just when I get the bulk of my work done. It's just good to focus, at 12 a.m., 1 a.m. Those are just great work times. But I definitely want to be a morning person. I have tried so hard, but maybe this semester, we'll see.
Great, thanks. And next question is reality shows or documentaries?
I watch a lot of sports. I think I got Netflix about 5 days ago, so I don't watch a ton of TV. Didn't have it growing up. So any sport, all sports. That's more mine.
Yeah, I love watching documentaries, and my siblings get annoyed at me for this because they want to watch other shows. But I think there are, lots of fun in documentaries and just cool stuff to watch.
Definitely. Next question is English or math?
Math, but math does not feel the same way about me.
So, yeah, math for me too. High five.
Oh my god, I could never relate more than this. And the last question is science or history?
My major involves a lot of history, but I've always been, I think I'm more interested in science. I'd rather read science than history, probably because I end up studying so much of history.
This is a hard one for me because my major is like complete science, and I do love science. I think it's wonderful. But I also really am interested in history. I think it's just so cool. I love reading this. I would say it's just 50-50. Sorry, did I cut out? Were y'all able to hear me?
Yeah, you are cutting off a bit, but we got the gist of what you're trying to say. But yeah, thank you guys so much, panelists. You guys are so helpful and insightful with all your responses. And attendees, if you guys could please say thank you in the chat, that'd be amazing. And all right, so Arfa has one last question. His question is, how do you recommend dealing with stress and making the most out of your high school experience?
I'm the worst person to ask for advice on this. I was massively stressed during applications. I had to drive an hour to school. So my days would be like 5 to probably 3 in the morning. And it was just, I did a terrible job. So do as I say, not as I do. Try to keep perspective. I know it's terrifying putting yourself out there, all of these different schools. But I mean, having been on the end of reading applications to these programs, it's astounding how impressive everyone is. So you are you have a much better chance than you think. I think that's the rule of thumb. It's easy to think that you are. It's easy to think about the worst case. In most cases, a no is just simply a lack of spots and not anything against you personally. And everybody makes a different decision when it comes down to that. So one rejection, don't let that change how you think about applying to the next scholarship, or the next school or the next program. Because you never know what somebody's going to look at or what they're going to decide. So try to view each one as isolated, and try to stay optimistic. There's a time and a place for pessimism and being very overly critical. After you submit your applications is not that time. After you submit an application, take a deep breath. You put your best foot forward and just wait to see what happens. Don't let anything carry over. I got rejected from, I think, 4 straight programs after interviewing, before I got the one I ended up at. It's very easy to get down, but you just have to try to keep thinking about the next one, and don't view it as a reflection of you. Wherever you end up, it's entirely what you make of it at that college. The person you are and the person when you're applying, it does not change based on where you go. You could do the same type of things that you do at any of these schools. Let's say there's a program you really like at a school, just because it's easy. Example, the IOP at Harvard. Let's say you really want to be in politics or government and you love what the IOP does. Try to set up something at your own school. Ask your local representative to come and talk or work on a project with students. They love to do that. They can always use the help. Just think about what you can control and what you can't control. I think that's the easiest thing that I've learned since I got to college the applications don't stop. Unfortunately, you will get a lot more applications and plenty more rejections. Gotten rejected from more things than I can count. Don't let that get in the way of anything. It's focus on what you can control. That's the biggest thing I've learned. You can do what you can do and but you can't admit yourself. So make it what you want it to be. Sorry for the long-winded and winding answer. I did a terrible job at this in high school, but this is something that I've learned since.
No, I think that's a wonderful response, and I agree with pretty much everything you said, because college applications, it's a stressful time, and I think that there is a difference between like negative stress and positive stress, because there's negative if you're being pessimistic, and that'll really depress you and like deter you from getting to where you need to be. But try to wield your stress positively. Make sure that because of your enthusiasm, you're focusing on your applications and you're trying to perfect them and you're trying to put your best foot forward, and really try to find a good support group. I think this is so important, especially when you're in that process of getting acceptance and getting rejections, because both are equally overwhelming. And you want to be surrounded by family members or friends or teachers and counselors who are going to be there for you, and people who are rooting for you, because everybody understands that this is a tough time, and so just have those people that you can go to just to talk about it. And also, like he said, whenever you are applying to colleges, there are some that you're going to get rejected from, and you can't let that stop you, because one rejection does not define who you are, and wherever you end up, it's going to be the best for you. I promise. You could go to a state school, or you could go to a private school. You could go to, your top list school or the bottom one on your list. But if you stay true to your values, and if you keep in perspective what goals you have and what impact you want to make and what career path you want, you can make it happen. And trust me, there are successful people from, all sorts of schools and all sorts of backgrounds. So never stop working hard. Be kind to yourself, take care of your mental health, get enough sleep, and, just try to be a happy, healthy person, because at the end of the day, getting rejected from a school, trust me, is not the end of the world. Even getting rejected from a scholarship is not that, right? One of the very first scholarships that I applied to that I thought I had a very good chance of getting into, I got rejected from. And, it was a little, disheartening, but I'm like, okay, this is just one scholarship, and you just got to move forward, and you never know what the future has in store for you. So always think optimistically, and just do your best, and go with the flow, and try to make the best of each situation. And one last thing that I would say actually is always, when you're very stressed or overwhelmed, one technique that I have is just step back, analyze your life, and take a deep breath, organize it, and step right back in and take things one list at a time, or one day at a time. Just calm yourself and try not to get too overwhelmed, because y'all being here shows that y'all want to work hard and that y'all are committed to a successful future. So y'all are going to do great things, and good luck.
Yeah, you guys all rock. You're gonna find the right place. Anybody that rejects you, the school's missing out, not you. And also, thank you, Lena, for hosting this. This has been really great. I wish something like this was around when I was applying to places. So best of luck to all of you. You guys are all spectacular.
Thank you so much, panelists. That was really uplifting and very